It is my pleasure to welcome best-selling author of American Housewife and Southern Lady Code, Helen Ellis, in celebration of her viciously funny, deeply felt collection of essays on friendship among grown-ass women. Bring your baggage and don't pack light. Joining her tonight in conversation is her friend and New York Times best-selling author of Dear Edward, Ann Napolitano. And Helen, welcome. Helen, congratulations, and I'm gonna pass it on to you.
Thank you. Thank you
No.
so much for hosting us. It's so exciting to be here to launch this wonderful book. Um, I couldn't be more happy to do an event, and I am super shy about doing events, but for Helen, it's a joy. And I should say first, like how we've known each other. So Helen and I and a writer, Hannah Tinty, um, ended up sitting next to each other in Danny Shapiro's workshop in New York University's MFA program a million years ago. I think I was 22. We might have been 23. We're not really sure. But in any case, the three of us ended up sitting next to each other in this workshop. And we were babies and completely unpublished and scared and really wanted to be writers. And we sort of looked at each other and realized that we were similar in some kind of way, even though we're incredibly different people. And we decided to, oh, yes. And actually, it was Helen who had of course it was Helen who had the idea that we should meet together once a week during that summer between the 2 years of graduate school to read each other's work. And now it's 25 years later or something, and we are still the first readers of each other's work. And we have described each other as like a three-part marriage or a three-legged stool. It's one of the biggest, most wonderful things that have happened to me in my life that I met these two women and that they are like my heart and that our careers are intertwined and that we get to sit. Our general standard idea is that when one of our book comes out, the other two of us sit in the front row and hold the writer's purse. And if it's Helen in the front row, she laughs really loudly at every joke, anything that even might be a joke, and she'll make hooting and hollering noises and she'll clap really loudly. She's like the best audience member ever. So I'm the shyest member of the three of us. Hannah has like a ukulele with her and most times she is giving a performance, but it's an absolute joy when one of our books comes out that we get to cheer for the other one. And this book is so funny and so smart. And if you read her first essay collection, Southern Lady Code, which is wonderful, this one is even deeper and funnier and more substantive. And I think she is the contemporary Nora Ephron. And actually in NPR, she got an amazing rave review from them this week. And this is just a little bit from it. Ellis is a hoot. She's also a force. She has clearly found her stride, or in her case, her strut. The writer who so memorably opened American Housewife, which is Helen's short story collection, with a Beyonce-inspired stallion walk to the toaster, is indeed noticeably unbridled and self-assured this collection, which gallops between bonding with grown-ass lady friends and wondering about other couples' married sex and her own desirability as she approaches 50. So like,
There, I made it.
oh sure, she made it. How do you not want to read that book? And like, what a fun thing even to like have one of your best friends write a book like that. We were like, oh my God, one of my best friends is writing about her sex life. How fun is that? Like, we don't all get to experience that in our lives.
And you're in the book, not your sex life, but
yeah.
You are in this book for the first
yes,
time.
I'm in this book. And so at the night, this is a celebration of grown-ass lady friendships, really. And actually, I was thinking when the bookseller we were talking to earlier said she moved around a lot as a child, so she didn't have serious friendships until she was older. Mm-hmm. And in the book, Helen, the first essay in the book, I'm terrible at titles. What it got
grown-ass ladies gone mild.
Yes, it's wonderful and really moving. But it's about her friendship with 4 other women who she was friends with from like early elementary school, and is still friends with today, and about like the long haul of that friendship and all the things that change and going through everything with someone and loving them through it. And also it being just unspeakably hilarious. Like you'll laugh out loud in every single essay in this book, I promise you. Um, I'm so happy to be here. Um,
Already.
Well, and I think it makes sense to start if you talk about how this book came to be, because as I recall, when you finished Southern Lady Code, which was your first collection of essays, you said no more.
No more. I said the same thing after this. I'll never do it again. And I'm doing it again,
Yeah.
as you well know.
Yeah.
It really started on that beach trip that I took with my childhood friends. And I'm recovering. I have a little cold, so you must excuse me as I go full Wendy Williams lozenge and lemon tea. And I had brought Southern Lady Code to read to my friend Vicky because I read her everything I write, and it sort of like gives me closure. And on that trip, she had arrived with a bad mammogram result and was heading back after the trip to get a follow-up, which proved to be cancerous. And at the same time, I was with my friend Paige, who was very happily remarried after surviving a bad marriage. And in the presence of these two women, I thought, look at these, champions and survivors, and how am I not gonna write about them? And that's where the idea started. Like, I have to tell everybody about how brave they are. And then as I continued to write, everything sort of just fell into place. Every essay sort of starts with, I have to tell you about my friend who had a baby at 50. I have to tell you about my friend who got back alley Botox. I have to tell you about this app that my friend Ann told me to get when I thought I was losing my mind with perimenopause. So it all sort of starts with me wanting to brag on somebody else.
Oh, so you don't know. One of my questions was, so because I've seen you go through this process twice, and I've only written fiction. It's such a different process. So for people that don't know, at least in Helen's situation, you basically have an idea maybe for the first essay, and then you're like, I want to do a collection, and then you write a proposal that you
Yeah.
give to your agent and editor.
I
And
have
then,
just been sort of like bluffing my way through the whole experience.
yeah,
Yeah, I with the first Southern Lady Code, I knew I wanted to write pieces about sort of being a displaced Southerner. And with Bring Your Baggage, I really wasn't sure what it was going to be, but I knew I wanted to write more. And then it sort of took shape. And I sold a third collection that you are reading now as I write. And that I knew what I wanted to write about. I knew I wanted to write about marriage. So that was very easy for me. For the very first time, I had a list of things I wanted to write about. And they all just happened to be about marriage. So it's really like I sort of honed in how I do it with each book. But I never expected to be writing nonfiction ever, ever, ever. And I kind of feel like I'm cheating because I have so much fun doing it. I'm just writing stories that you already know, Ann.
I know, I know. It's so great though. It's funny because we all started as fiction writers at NYU, and that was what everyone in our program was, and you don't think outside of that. And then Helen was asked to write a nonfiction piece for something, which is what launched Southern
Yeah.
Lady Code. But when and it became a modern love, one of the most popular of the year modern love columns in the New York Times, like 3-4 years ago, I guess, probably now. Yeah. And
2017.
yeah, and so she wrote this piece, and she performed it, or read it at like a bar, like an event where a bunch of people were reading personal essays. And it was the first time that she'd written a personal essay, certainly in this way, and the first time that we'd heard her read it. And I just remember sitting in the audience next to her husband Lex and Hannah Tinty, of course, in the front row.
Of course.
I think we had to sit on either side of Lex. I don't know, there was like
I made you do that because it was the first time I was writing something true, and it was about me becoming a recovering slob to save my marriage. So it's all about my husband. I said, okay, he had read it, but I'm like, I want either one of you on either side of him just to like brace him.
Yes. Well, so Helen gets him to read it, and Helen is an amazing reader, period. She's like the best performer in the audience and the best performer on stage. And so she starts reading it, and like up 2 paragraphs in, it's like the room is heaving with laughter. And I start crying because it's so funny. Even though I've read it already, I'm crying because it's making me laugh so hard. And we were all just like, oh my God, what is happening? And it was like this breaking open of your career in a way. But it made complete sense because you come from storytellers. Your father is an amazing storyteller. Your sister is a great storyteller. And
Oh,
you know,
yes, my sister of One Bad Mother podcast.
yes.
Yes, and if you want to hear some good stories, you should log on to that.
Yeah, so it's so much a part of who you are. It's so funny that it never, appeared as a possibility. But like when you wrote that essay, it was like, oh my God, of course you should be doing this. Like it's hysterical. And you're so lucky that you're married to a man who doesn't mind that.
Well, he comes off very well.
I know, but still.
I know. He's very excited to be. There've been a few reviews, like the NPR review that just came out this week named him. So he had to send it to CBS to say, okay, publicity, just so you know, my name is out there. And he gets very tickled. And People magazine said, her chagrined husband. So I'm referring to him as my chagrined husband.
Yeah, it's very good. Well, so that's one great bit of good fortune, because obviously if Lex had been like, I'm not comfortable with this, you probably wouldn't have done it, or it certainly would have changed what you were writing, because you are a very happily married human and, love and respect your husband. But tied into that, then along with that, it's like, my question is, how are you brave enough to write these things in the moment? Because I think about the first novel that I wrote was like loosely based on my mother's Irish Catholic family.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I thought to myself, well, this is never going to be published, so they're never going to read it. So that gave me, because I hadn't published anything so that until then, so I had good reason to think that. And that allowed me to write honestly in a way. But when you write these things, you've actually already sold the collection. So people are going to read it.
Okay.
And you write like you wrote an essay in it called like Happy Birthday, You're Still Fuckable. So like
not everyone wanted to go by name in that. If you're in a piece, I will send you the piece before it goes to print, because if you don't want to be named, for example, if you don't want to know that it's you whose boyfriend has the nylon fetish and you have 30 full body stockings in your closet, if you don't want your friends to know that's you, then I'll take your name out. But it's true. And and my friend Patty, who appears in that story, who I think is watching now, I'll send it and say, okay, you appear in this story. If you want me to change your name, I'll change your name. If you don't want me to publish it, I won't publish it. If I have a fact wrong, let me know. So like with the story about my friend with Vicky, who had cancer, she only had one change, which was she had received 28 radiation treatments, and I think I put 24. So like it was that kind of, switch. And with my friend Patty, I say that I judge a friend by how much she tells me about her sex life and how soon. And so when I set Patty up with the man who is now her husband, I got a phone call from her the next morning, and she's whispering to tell me about the date. I said, why are you whispering? He's right beside me. And then she proceeded to tell me that his penis took up half her twin mattress. And that's what I wrote. I think, Helen, in a text, I think what I said was it was as big as a baby's arm. But I like yours better. Stick with the mattress.
Well, right. So that's how like your friends have to get approval for these like details from their lives. But like, how are you brave enough to write those things? You just don't like. It is marvelous to me.
I think that I could never have done this when we were in our 20s or 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do attribute a lot to the amount of failure that I've had as a writer, and you have borne witness to it, and you have had your own. We have both been through, all three of us, you, me, and Hannah, have been through the ups and downs. And I think I had 15 years between my novel, which came out in 1999, and the short story collection, where nothing was published and I stopped writing. Um, and I just became very comfortable with just my life as it is. And so I'm not afraid of the failure. Uh, but also with age, I'm a lot less embarrassed. And I remember being 30 years old, 35 years old, and reading Nora Ephron's I Feel Bad About My Neck and say, oh, thank God you were telling me that my neck is going to go at 43. Or being 13 or really 10 years old and reading Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, and being told about teenage softies and, 7 Minutes in Heaven and things that I was about to experience. So part of me in writing this is saying, this is what's coming. It's all going to be fine. Let me tell you some secrets. Let me make you laugh. Nothing embarrasses me anymore. Nothing embarrasses me anymore.
It's true.
As you well know.
Yes, I do well know.
Anytime we do an event, the last event we did together was for your book, Dear Edward, at Books Are Magic in Brooklyn. And so we're all on stage, you, me, and Hannah, and I believe his 12-year-old was in the front row with your husband. And the nervousness on your husband's face of what is Helen going to say in front of my child? I think I held it together pretty well. I think I'm known in your family amongst your sons as the loud friend.
Yes, yes. Much to their delight. That and the one with the two cats.
I have the two cats who are the same age as your boys.
Yes, that's true. Patty put emojis in the chat. And Hannah just put a quote, nothing embarrasses me anymore, Helen Ellis. It's true. And I think part of that sort of like, let me tell you a story and let me tell you what's coming. The same way, like you do have this great essay in it called Are You There, Menopause? Terrible. Are you there? Are you there,
Menopause?
It's me, Helen. Yeah, which is such a great title. And you talk about your bridge lady friends, who are this wonderful set of friends that you met when you took bridge lessons 10 years ago or whatever. And they had started playing bridge because they became empty nesters. Their kids went to college, so they're like 7 years older than you. Mm-hmm. And how they, were talking to you about menopause because they're just like steps ahead. And these essays do feel there's like a kindness in them and in all of your mature writing. That really comes through. And so nothing that you write sounds like horrifying. It all sounds like funny and kind.
Well, and I try, my mantra is be funny, be honest, be kind. But people watching should know, in terms of a workshop, I will let it all out. And then Ann will go through every so often and say, this line is a little harsh. Or not everyone knows your sense of humor like I do. And I just cut it. So you do what I call curbing. You curb the bitch. Thank you very much.
It's not usually bitch. It's just, like people have to know that you're coming from this place of kindness. And like that you have this hilarious family, that are all like deep characters. And to understand the humor baked into your family is necessary to realize that you're like not being mean to each other or not like saying horrifying things. It's just, you're just very honest and dark.
It's our sense of humor.
And it's the best thing ever. Well, in keeping with your process, kind of, I thought
the menopause essay. I have Hannah's fan that I stole from her that appears in the essay. It's my hot flash fan.
Yes, and Helen referenced an app. And the app is called Clue. And I think there are other ones now too. And she calls it a menopause app, but it's not a menopause app. It's like a period tracking app. So people use it for fertility as well as, but it's a great app. We both highly recommend it. It's very helpful for tracking your period.
Yeah, as I say you appear in the menopause piece because my PMS has started to go crazy with the perimenopause. And I write in the book, my friend Ann is the most serene, as you can tell, person that I've ever met. She, never raises her voice. I've never heard the woman cry. And the nicest thing you ever said to me was that once a month, sometimes I feel like murdering my husband. I said, oh, thank you so much. She's, but don't worry, there's an app for that. And so now I have the Clue app, and I look at it and go, oh, this murderous intent is just PMS.
Once a month, I find myself thinking, I am so irritated.
Yes.
And then I'm like, that sentence plays, and then I'm like, oh, what day is it?
Yeah, well, I feel like now you and I, especially, because you have certain people you talk about certain things with, and I think about, are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. And they're all waiting to get their periods. And one of them sends a postcard to Margaret, and it just says, I got it, and she got her period. And I swear to every so often, I send Ann a text that says, I got it. Like 18 days early, 35 days late.
Yes, and I send the same things back to her.
It's true.
But so I love that you wrote this essay, and I do feel like menopause is having like a moment right now where people are finally fucking talking about it, because there's so many women and we're all go through all of this. It's crazy how little information there is.
It goes on forever.
No, I did not know anything. I had no idea about anything.
And I think that, you talk about how I can write about whatever. I do think that there's a power with that PMS that I have now, where I say no more easily. My limits are set very easily because I had this, I don't want to say temper, but I don't have a tolerance for certain things. And when I'm writing and I have PMS, I am just much more direct. And maybe that comes out funny, but I don't care as much, what people think. But I basically just write for you and Hannah. Like I just want to make the two of you laugh.
I was wondering, do you have someone in mind when you're like? I wondered whether it was Lex. Is it like Lex too? Because you're like, don't want to.
I really do write for you and Hannah. Like if you two check it off, then I'm good. And usually Lex always, my husband always reads whatever I write aloud to me so I can hear it, because he is not my typical audience. My audience are women, and gay men. That is who my audience is. My 1% are straight men. And so if he laughs or if he starts to drag while he reads it, I know what's working and what's not working. But with the new book that I'm writing now, which is about marriage, for the first time, I'm letting the two of you read it and me revise it before he reads it, because you only get to make a first impression once, and you want that first impression to be as positive as it could be, because like I say, every piece is a love letter, and I never I want to make it as a good impression as I can.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think one of the things about having the three of us, which is interesting, because I feel we all feel very aware when you give your work to even like your wonderful agent Brittany or your amazing editor Jenny Jackson, like they are only going to have that first impression once, and I feel very aware of that too as a writer. And we have like a place in each other's lives which is very different, where like we want each other to read it when it's not at its best, and then we rarely read it when it is at its best.
That's true.
Particularly for fiction. Like Helen's essays are actually so enjoyable and so short and all that kind of thing that we do actually end up, like I do read them when they're done. And often, like she has to figure out the order at the end, which is a really interesting part of the essay process, which obviously is not relevant if you're writing a novel or whatever.
And you figure out, because like with this collection, Bring Your Baggage, I'd say I probably cut out 7 pieces. That you helped me cut out, where like this one doesn't really fit. This essay about serial killers doesn't fit in this collection. And I think about Dear Edward, how was it 8 years that you worked on that? 8 years. So I mean, I read it for 8 years, and I haven't read the final version, because I just had read it so many times, and
it's too many times. So but I think that's actually part of the magic of what we do for each other, because when Helen and Hannah, for instance, read my fiction, it's not working, and to whatever degree it's not working, but they see how good it could be, and that's what they talk me towards.
Yeah.
So they believe in this finished, really good version, which hopefully eventually appears, and they don't need to read it because because they saw
She's
it.
an amazing editor, so I know she's going to do amazing things. But it is interesting. I do think about the pandemic, and I've watched you write so many novels. And this novel that you're writing now, that you're finished with and you're revising now, you wrote during the pandemic. I've never seen you write so quickly or so easily. I feel like I've been on a roller coaster, just like riding along and having the best time. And it's just amazing, like how our processes has
Yeah.
changed over the years.
Yeah. Well, actually, for your process for writing essays, I thought it would be interesting for writers. Like, you have three things that I can think of that you rely on as like your to make it functional and to make it work for you, and that would be spreadsheets,
I
dead,
do enjoy a spreadsheet.
deadlines, and feedback.
And yes, and money.
Well, that's the deadline as well.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah. So can you talk about spreadsheets, deadlines, and feedback?
Both of us were, well, you were an assistant and I was a secretary, personal assistant. So, and Hannah was a secretary as well. We all met, we were all temping in New York to pay the bills. And I am always a secretary. I love a spreadsheet. And so when I had the short story collection, I had a spreadsheet of all the literary magazines where I was submitting it to. And then with the essay collections, what I do even now with the book I'm working on now, I have a spreadsheet with all the titles, how many words. I sign my book deals on word count. So I have a running total. How far am I towards that goal? So right now, for the book I'm writing now, I am 29% there. And that makes me feel very good. And it also shows me, like the different lengths of the pieces, how to sort of measure them out. So spreadsheet is great. Deadline, you said, is number two. I guess I'm forever a student. I love a deadline. I am so happy to be with Doubleday and Jenny Jackson. This will be the book I'm writing now is the third book I've written under contract. I just can't imagine not doing that because I like being held accountable. What was the third thing?
Feedback. So like you giving it to us.
The other thing is feedback is with the spreadsheet as well. With the essays, I write an essay. The way it works now is I write an essay. You look at it, I revise it, I give it to Jenny. She looks at it, I revise it, and then I put it to bed and don't look at it until the whole collection is close to done. So when the collection is done, it's really tight and really edited, and I can see sort of what's missing. And so I'm just polishing and revising all the way through, and I feel like it's really done, as opposed to chapters where in a novel where I watch you got to go back. One thing changes, you got to go back and sort of ripple it through. So the essays are really rewarding in that way. There's this instant gratification. Like every 2 to 3 weeks, I get a little, gold star.
When you sign your agreement or whatever with Doubleday, it's like really like a year.
It's a year. Last one was 9 months. I had 9 months, and this is a year. I like that. I have a little ticking clock. I have 324 days left. That means I have to write this many words a week or this many words a day. So it just helps me sort of be in the business.
I feel like a poker player in you too, like the accounting of.
Yeah, I have spreadsheets for my poker money as well.
Yeah, Helen is a, I don't know, semi-professional poker player as well.
Because semi-soft D's.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I'm a camembert of poker players. I've been playing online for the first time ever with this group. And so I've had a spreadsheet for like the pandemic just to see where I am. And I think at this point, I'm up $125 for the whole pandemic. And I feel like that is a great win on my part.
Do you have a spreadsheet for your fiction, for poker, and for like taxes, and that's it?
Oh, I have I have taxes spreadsheet. And then I have a lot of spreadsheets.
You do. I don't have any spreadsheet.
I do. I just did a spreadsheet of like addresses, but I still am someone when it comes to dresses, like I'm a hand writer, like I handwrite all the Christmas cards, but I still have a spreadsheet.
Yes.
Mhm.
Which so one of the interesting things to me is that you pitch this to your editor, you have like a plan, you have ideas for several essays, but then with both of these collections, well, this is yeah, the third, the one
Mhm.
you're writing now, you've
Yeah.
had surprises where like which is
Yeah.
interesting to me. So can you remember like which ones were a
Yes.
surprise
I
in this?
remember very well in twice, but once in, I think it was like in October of 2020 or 2018, whenever I was writing this, and I was at lunch with my editor, and I just wasn't sure what I was gonna write. But we'd already had lunch, and she said, "You should write what you talked to me about at lunch. You should write about this trip you took with your girlfriends." And in February of 2019, right before the pandemic, we had lunch on Valentine's Day,
Mhm.
and my girlfriend Michelle 2 days prior had given birth to a baby, and I had been her backup plan, so I was there ready to catch if need be. And so I told that whole story, and my editor said, you need to write about that. So that was a complete surprise. And sometimes you tell me what to write about, like with Southern Lady Code, you and Hannah were saying you have to write about your 13th birthday party where your father faked his own death as a joke. So both of you are, and even now, it's funny too. I'll something will happen. You'll say, "Oh, how was your first colonoscopy?" And I say, "Wait, I'm going to write about it. You'll read about it first." Which
You're
is
like, I've got 20 pages of notes that I took during the colonoscopy experience.
yes, yes. Pat, don't like.
Oh, that's interesting. And which essays in this, which one was the easiest to write in this collection, and which one was the most challenging?
I think the most challenging piece was the first piece, which is I think is the heart of the book, Grown Ass Ladies Gone Mild, because it's such a huge piece about my lifelong friendship. And I really wanted to honor the experiences of Vicky and Paige, and they knew I was writing about it. And I kept saying, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you. But I really wanted it to be as perfect as possible. Because again, you want the love to come across, because there's a lot of jokes, but they know me. But that was the hardest piece, just because I love these women so much, and I wanted it to show that it was honoring. And then I think the menopause piece was a little hard for me, just to be that vulnerable,
Mhm.
just to talk about that level of intimate details as I sit here fanning myself, having a hot flash. But I look like Beyonce, I think.
Well, I would say because I went through the book again today, and I think to me the funniest one, and part of it is because I've known you for so long, so like it's extra wonderful and satisfying because like I get to get these stories in these different ways, like filtered through your experience now. And to me, the most moving one, well, the first one is the most moving, the one you were just talking about with your four friends, which really is like the heartbeat of the book. The second most moving one to me, because I think to me it's the most unexpected one, is the backup plan,
Huh? Yeah,
where
it was a
where you
surprise.
yeah, it's a surprise in every way. So Helen's friend, who was 50, almost
He
50,
had the baby at 50. Yeah.
she had her baby at 50, and so as Helen just said, her main best friend and was out of town, and she went into labor, and Helen was the backup plan, so she went to the hospital. And knowing Helen has a deep fear of birth,
Yes.
and didn't ever want to give birth to a baby, and like looks horrified basically if anyone talks about giving birth. I have two children, so I've seen her look horrified on several occasions. Um, but that essay is so sweet because I know what a stretch that was for you, and for you to show up for your friend in that situation, and also as the backup person, because Helen is like the belle of the ball. Like she, oh, actually, I meant to say Hannah did this wonderful book trailer for the book. It's on Hannah and Helen's Instagrams. It's really great. It's a wonderful trailer, which Hannah freaking made by herself because she is amazing and she can do anything.
Very
Um,
classy.
She's very crafty and amazing. And so she wrote in her post today, she called you her funniest, fiercest, and most fabulous friend. And I second that a million percent. Like when you wrote your first collection, I remember thinking, oh my God, everyone's going to want to be friends with her now. Like it's going to get like elbowed out. But yes, so that essay with the backup plan was it was just this other, softer side of you. And also you making yourself vulnerable to this situation, which is kind of horrifying to you for a friend. And then to me, the funniest one is I feel better about my neck.
Hey, it's on camera. It looks good.
You got to read this essay, you guys, because Helen had this procedure done. It's not a procedure because it was not surgical. You have to read it. It's great. She decided to do this thing. She didn't feel good about her neck like Nora Ephron, and she did something about it. But prior to that, she goes with her friend Danny to get Botox, cheap Botox from like a backstreet vendor who you shouldn't be going to. And that scene like makes me cry with laughter. They have a safe word because they go into this place.
Oh.
And
Pineapple.
she's like, we need a safe word, and it's pineapple. And
Well, I think about Danny you've met. I remember introducing you to Danny at one of the Christmas parties years ago. I was like, oh, Ann, you have to meet my new favorite person. Because Danny is such a, like, she'll do anything. She'll try anything. And she told me she appeared in the last book and she appears much more prominently in this book. But she said, my life is yours to write. And she says, and if you want to lie, I'll say it's true. But I haven't lied. Yeah.
And that essay alone it's among the funniest things I've ever read.
And that's the last piece I wrote. And I wrote it during the beginning of the pandemic. And I wrote that, it's very long. And I wrote it in like 2 days. I remember both of you saying, how long have you been working on this? And I'm like, 2 days. But it had been cooking in my mind, I guess. And my neck had been cooking for many, many months and years. But it was the easiest thing to come out. Like, because it's something that a self-conscious thing I've lived with for my whole life. And like in Southern Lady Code, one of the easiest and quickest pieces I wrote was Free to Be You and Me and Child Free, because it's a piece I wanted to have read about being child free as a younger person. And this is a piece where I wish I had read it, years ago. So sometimes I'm writing just for me.
I just, you all need to buy this book and give it to all your female friends because it is like a slam run dunk.
We're not very sporty.
So fun. So wonderful. Danny Shapiro's here, and she said, "Wait, you have another Danny?"
Oh my God! We're both gonna have a heart attack. Our teacher is here. Teacher is here. Well, I remember, and I hope I can say this. We were going to see Hannah do something, and I go to meet you at a restaurant near the place, and you're standing outside, and you said, Danny Shapiro is inside. I can't go in by myself. I said, oh, thank God, I wouldn't have wanted to do it either, because she's forever teacher.
Like 5 years ago, so it's
rate us.
3 or something at the time.
25 years ago, but always teacher. And I have such a memory of being in Danny's workshop. And, I was being critiqued. I'm 26 years old and just a smart ass, know-it-all. And the critique was happening, and I kept jumping in to explain or defend whatever it was. And she is also a very quiet, serene woman, and just looked at me and said, stop. And, just listen. And I hear her voice even to this day, even in this interview. I'm like, stop, let Ann talk. Stop, just listen.
Yeah, and we have to stop talking now because we have to take questions from questions that they would like to have answered by Helen Michelle.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, Thank you. That's this has been such a fun conversation to listen to. I hated to interrupt with the Q&A, but we do have an audience with questions. Yes, so Heidi's reminding us, but if you have questions, please get them into the Q&A box. I saw a few in the chat and I think I caught them, but to make sure they're asked, please get those in the Q&A box. And we do, oh, they're popping up really fast. So okay, I better start. So the first one is from Elizabeth, and Helen, I believe it's for you. How hard was it to shift from fiction, to let go of that idea that it was fiction or nothing?
It was so easy. I don't have to make anything up with nonfiction, and nobody told me that. It was really, really easy. I think about writing fiction again, but even now I think about stories in terms of essays. Like I said, I had this colonoscopy, and like, oh, I have to write about that. So it's, and I watch Anne again, like I'm watching Anne write this massive, 100,000 word novel over the last year, and I'm just thinking, how are you doing that? It's like watching, Rumpelstiltskin, make what did he do with the string? I don't know. But it's like watching magic. I can't imagine going back. So it was really, really, really easy, and I have a great time doing it.
Very nice. This next question is from Chris. Is there an essay you wanted to include but couldn't or didn't? Why wasn't included, and what was it about?
Oh, I'm gonna say no. No, not really. No. Can you think of one that?
But
Yeah.
you've cut essays, but not for.
There wasn't anything I didn't write that I wanted to write. Sometimes pieces were cut because I wanted to narrow the book to focus on friendship, and so maybe there was a piece about something that was more Southern Lady Code, like about housekeeping or hostessing. Like I wrote this really funny piece for Eating Well magazine about how I will never cook a Thanksgiving turkey again, and it's hilarious, but it just didn't belong, in this collection. So no, it's good stuff's in there.
I'm going to ask like a tag-on question. With all these essays that you write, and then you say, oh, that would have been better with this other collection that you've already written, do you publish them in magazines and or online, or do you have plans to write second collections along the same lines of your?
So in Southern Lady Code, there were a few pieces that had been published in magazines. In this collection, nothing was published in magazines, and the book I'm working now is the same. So I'm writing like straight to book form. Although I do have a piece out right now in Garden and Gun about my grandpapa's 24-hour punch, and all about punch culture. Returning to the punch bowls. So I kind of hope I can work that into the new collection. But that was the sort of great thing about American Housewife, is that magazines asked me to write nonfiction. So Garden and Gun asked me to write about going to play poker with my father at the Beau Rivage. And again, I just said, sure, I can do it. And I'd never done that sort of thing before. So that's been a real thrill for me. Getting to write for magazines, because I really like doing it. And again, it's that instant gratification and something published, but nothing in Bring Your Baggage has been published anywhere, and nothing in the new book will be published anywhere.
Muted myself for background noise. This is from Deborah. She's wondering, I'm curious, where do you work? Do you have a set place at home, or go out, or do you go out, or vary? Working at home so much during the pandemic and now I have a new appreciation for finding a space to be productive.
We could both answer that. I work at the New York Society Library, which is like a townhouse library, and I hide up in the stacks. So I'm often in K through Z stacks. So I write underneath Judith Krantz and Sidney Sheldon, and nobody ever goes up there. And I sit under a little light, and I say hello to the librarians, and they say hello, Mrs. Harris, when I come in. Um, but during the pandemic, I wrote at home for the first time, and my husband, who works for CBS, worked from home. So I would put headphones on because everything news was happening on the other side of the bedroom door. Um, and I would have to sort of drown it out because again, I had a deadline. I was going to make that deadline. And you've been moving all over the place.
Yeah, but I mean, like I write at home and I just hide from my children and husband and write wherever is convenient to do that. And I use like noise canceling headphones too, actually, which are very helpful to block out people out.
Do you have something that you have to have with you to write, like a cup of tea or a special pen or the right laptop? Anything like that?
My laptop looks like a placemat. It is so filthy. But no, that's what I like about going to the library is there's no internet up in the stacks, and you're not allowed to eat or drink, and it's just very studious, and I feel like I'm at work or in a nunnery, but and it works to my focus. Do you need anything, Ann? I have your cappuccino once a day or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
I have latte in the morning, but that's not connected to writing really. I can write since I had kids. I'll write anytime, anywhere that I have the space. I'm not precious at all anymore.
Yeah.
Very nice. And I have a question for you, Helen. Do you carry around a notebook to track these funny stories that you hear, or do you go straight from memory, or a little bit of both?
It has changed. Again, it has changed because now I'm doing these essays. It's such a hoity-toity word, I think, but I think of them as just funny stories. But it's changed now that I'm doing it more regularly. What usually happens is I'm telling the same story over and over again. So a story, I think I told you this story, Ann. I'm calling it the What's in the Box story, which you're going to have to wait for the new collection to find out. But I'll tell a story over and over again. And if I find myself doing that, then I know it belongs. Like in the Grown Ass Lady's Gone Mild, there was this moment where my friend and I are waiting to go on one of the rides, the treetop drop, which is like a direct, 70-foot drop down a massive straw into the legs of a bronzed 17-year-old Adonis. And we're waiting to go on it. And we say to the woman in front of us, should we ride the treetop drop? And she said, if you want to taste the crotch of your own bathing suit. And how am I not going to put that in a book? And I just, when I keep telling a story, it's going to stick with me. But nowadays, now that I know that I'm sort of doing this on a regular basis, I'll take notes. So again, like I talk about the colonoscopy that I write about for the new book, and I just wrote like 20 pages of notes right afterwards. And when I was with my friend Michelle, I had brought a notebook with me just because I'm a good bedside attendant, taking notes. 9:30, this doctor came in and gave her the Pitocin, and so I had those notes from that experience. And I remember writing about my friend Meredith, who tried this murder case. And I went to the trial every day for 2 weeks and took notes. And what I learned from that experience was to get it all down, get everything out on the computer right away, because that took me 6 months to write. Whereas writing about Michelle and having the baby, I did it immediately after the experience, and it took me a week. So it's always changing, but I do always have a notebook with me because I want to be like David Sedaris. He keeps a notebook, so I keep a notebook.
Nice. This next question is from Hannah, the other Hannah that has been mentioned quite a bit during this conversation. Yeah. Helen, please talk about She's Young.
Oh, that's your favorite. That's Hannah's favorite. So She's Young is a piece I wrote about being at my Pilates, and I was laying next to my neighbor and good friend Peggy, who is 80 something, and we were being stretched. And Peggy says to me, "Oh, Helen, you have to see the new play about Gloria Steinem." And a 20-something-year-old receptionist said, "Who's Gloria Steinem?" And I proceeded to blow a gasket. And Peggy says, "Oh, she's young, Helen." And then she says to her, "Just Google her." And it was this patience that my 88-year-old friend has that I am trying to gain, of being forgiving. Like, I remember being 23 years old and working as a secretary at Chanel. And my first day on the job, I spelled Coco, K-O-K-O, like the sign language speaking gorilla. And very judgmental lady let me have it. But, you learn that way. But so it's Still Young is just about, being more patient and forgiving with people who are younger than you, and learning from people who are older than you. And that's Hannah, my gift to you is I will always be 2 years older than you.
You'll have advice. Let's see. Next question is from Patty. Did you have to convince any of your friends to publish them?
Patty, who we have spoken of before, again, her husband comes off very well in the piece. No, usually everybody has given me their okay. In one essay called "A Room of One's Own," that's full of gay men from Southern Lady Code, which is about just growing up in Alabama and nobody being out of the closet, including my own grandfather, who lived with a man my entire life, but was not out of the closet. I put in every essay sort of stems from an event, and that sort of stemmed from me going to a bachelor party for my friends Bernard and Carmine, and they originally were going to change their names to David and Isaac. And then Bernard said, the whole point of the essay is that we are comfortable and proud of who we are, so we should use our real names for our children to see. And they both said yes, and we changed their names to their original names at the last minute so that's the only time that it almost changed.
That's a great story. I like that one. Let's see. The next two questions I have here are from Hannah. So I'm going to ask one, but I've got one from Heidi, my coworker, in my text message.
Okay.
But this one is also from Hannah. What's it like to hear back from readers after you let these essays out into the world? Has anything surprised or delighted you about their reception?
Well, something surprised me today that someone had the balls to write in the comments, "Shouldn't it be bring your baggage and don't pack lightly? Wouldn't her editor know that it's lightly?" And I just thought, who does that? So that was very surprising. But it really is usually makes me really happy. The feedback usually makes me very happy, because we all really do experience so much of the same thing. And so today is the first day it's out, so I'm just starting to hear things today and this week. But usually the feedback is positive, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not, and it makes me. I know I talked to Ann and Hannah about writing more nonfiction, because I said to Ann, "Oh God, the criticism is coming," and they're like, "Helen, it's not criticism, it's reviews." I'm like, "But I'm the main character. It's criticism." So there is this element of, some people can be critical, but it is what it is. It is what it is, I guess. Anne tells me that I'm nice.
And I hope that you also get some fun stories told to you, especially during in-person events, that you get people to tell you.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh,
That's
yes.
great as a bookseller, listening to other people tell fun stories.
Let me tell you right now.
Yeah.
It's fabulous. So I did an interview this week, and I will not say where or when, but the interviewer told me that she used to be a funeral pickup driver. And I asked her, "What's the worst thing or weirdest thing you ever saw?" And she wouldn't tell me on the air, but she told me privately. And the weirdest thing she ever picked up was she had to pick up a body on the subway tracks. And I said, "What piece did you pick up first?" And she said, "The foot." And I said, "How did you pick it up?" "By the bone." And I was like a cheese cube on a toothpick.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And See, I wish that had gone. I wish that had gone in this book because there was a great spot for that.
Yeah, it's got to be in the one that goes with the true crime story, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's next.
I'll think of something. I'm going to think of something and work that in. You heard it first here.
Yes, we heard it first here, exclusive on Book Sync's event. Heidi wrote something in here. I have a question from her, but Heidi's in the background, so she can't actually ask it in the Q&A box. But
Okay.
so speaking of feedback and criticism, it's not criticism because it's feedback. So many of these stories resonated with this bookseller. Tons of gratitude for the wisdom, laughter, and yes, even tears. So that's from Heidi. On your release date, on your book birthday. But she also has a question. Is there any talk of a collaborative project amongst the three of you, Helen, Ann, and Hannah?
Absolutely not. No.
Right? Different things that we're just each other's cheerleaders, and we hold high standards for each other, which I think is a hard gift, but it's the gift that we give each other. And there's no way.
No way.
What it would look like. It would be some strange. No.
Something funny, I'm sure.
I don't know.
It's okay. You can continue just being each other's supporters and the peanut gallery at the events and the in conversation partners. You're doing a wonderful job. It's been so much fun to listen to you. We have one more great ending question, of course, from Hannah that I'm going to get both of you to answer. Can you share a word or two of encouragement to a writer who feels discouraged about writing?
You might go first. I blow my nose.
Well, I mean, we've Helen and I have both been there. Hannah's been there. It's part of being a writer, 100,000,000%. I don't, even the most successful writers that I know of went through fallow periods and periods of rejection and periods of just like sort of meh interest in their work. No matter who you name, that you can find a period like that. The thing that I always say, because I like to give sort of like practical, tangible advice, is I think something that I stole from something I read that Ann Patchett said, which I use when I am in periods of like despair and hopelessness, where I'm like usually in the middle of a novel when it takes like 8 years and you're like, I'm just nowhere near the end of my life, actually get a real job, etc. I make a deal with myself that I'm going to write for 5 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so once I've written for 5 minutes, I put an X on that calendar day. And my only job is to string together as many X's as possible. And of course, sometimes what?
It's a spreadsheet.
Well, kind of, yes. It's like my version of spreadsheet. And so I try to string together as many as possible. Many of those days, of course, I'll write for longer than 5 minutes, but you can never talk yourself into being like, I don't have time to do 5 minutes. You always have time to do 5 minutes. And that keeps the work breathing and moving. And eventually I travel out of that period of despair and the book is there waiting for me.
I agree. And I'll do it with, I do the same thing. And I have, I think Danny Shapiro is who told me about this app years ago, the Microsoft Freedom, which cuts off all of your internet, and I will set that for 30 minutes. Usually I set it for 2 hours. That's my usual. That's what I write every day. I just do 2 hours a day. Sometimes it'll be more, but that's it. And sometimes I'm just sitting there working the crossword puzzle, but I just show up and do it. But my biggest piece of advice that I always give is to find a workshop. And a workshop could be one person, 2 people. That's what we have. It could be, more than that. But I have such memories of the years where I was not getting published, and especially the years where I stopped. I did not write for years, but Ann and Hannah continued to meet with me, continue to take my advice, continue with their work, continue to treat me as a writer, even though I didn't call myself a writer. And so that's my advice, just to find one person who will, who likes, who's a writer like you. That's that. It's not that hard to find. You could do it. Online now, especially, there's so many ways to meet people online. But,
opportunity.
Yeah, there's a lot out there now. So thank you for wrapping it up with that question, positivity in that. Tonight has been so much fun listening to you two chat. Obviously your friendship is very strong and it shows. And thank you so much for choosing BookSync to help you launch your book. Helen, congratulations. And thank you to the attendees for coming out tonight. If you purchased your book through Eventbrite, they will ship out shortly. If you haven't gotten your book yet and you still need to purchase it, or you would like to send it to as a gift, which it makes a really great gift, there it is. Bring your baggage and don't pack light. And as well as Dear Edward are both 15% off our website for the next week with the coupon BookSync events, and I will be sending this all out in an email, follow-up email, so you don't have to remember it. But we do ship nationwide and to Canada, so if you would like to buy your book through BookSync or gift a book through BookSync, you have a week to do so and get the special event coupon. So again, thank you so much, Helen, and again, a wonderful conversation. Maybe next time we can have you on here with Hannah, and we'll have even bigger friend group conversation. It's truly a pleasure. And I know my friend Elena, my coworker who was supposed to take my place, and very sad to miss this, loves your work, Helen. So I just want to say that, give her the opportunity to say thank you for writing the book and continuing to bring light and humor to your essays and your friendships. So thank you so much and good night. And best of luck with that.
Thank you, Miss Ann.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely night. Bye.